All right, so yesterday I did a quick overview of colonial script in the Panic of 1837. So today I want to read you where I kind of got some of the information from. Most of it came from Ralph Epperson's The Hidden Hand, and it was just off the top of my head. I'm going to read you directly from this website here from peakprosperity.com. I'm getting to it from Google, so I'm showing where I had it. Google linked it, and here it is. Peak Prosperity, Hidden History. According to Benjamin Franklin, the real reason for the Revolutionary War has been hid from you. American history has been a compendium of our ongoing battle with the privately controlled Bank of England, beginning with the Revolutionary War. To understand our history, we need to go back to Benjamin Franklin, who is often called the father of paper money. Though it has been used thousands of years earlier, more accurately, he was the father of colonial American paper money. Franklin's paper money was a primary reason for fighting America's war for independence. But first, let's explore colonial scrip money. In 1729, he wrote A Modest Inquiry into the Nature and Necessity of a Paper Currency. This pamphlet, a brilliant tour de force, was well received by the common people. The rich, however, hate it, but they have no writers among them able to answer it. Franklin's arguments carry the day, and the paper money bill gains a majority in the Pennsylvania Assembly. And here's the book cover, A Modest Inquiry into the Nature and Necessity of a Paper Currency. And you notice about this, the necessity, just like the original Constitution called it Congress. So I don't know how F turned into an S, or maybe that is an S, it's just a huge S. It's not an F, it looks like an F, so maybe Congress was really Congress, and this is necessity. I don't know, I just noticed that. All right, colonial scrip was very successful. There was abundance in the colonies, and peace was reigning on every border. It was difficult and even impossible to find a happier and more prosperous nation on all the surface of the globe. Comfort was prevailing in every home. The people in general kept the highest moral standards, and education was widely spread. Benjamin Franklin. No doubt, many of the colonies were doing very well, especially Pennsylvania and Massachusetts, where the amount of new paper money was controlled. But not all the colonies had the same success, as earlier attempts in South Carolina resulted in a currency depreciation. A system was clearly needed, and Franklin forged that system with his A Modest Inquiry into the Nature and Necessity of a Paper Currency. Franklin begins his pamphlet by noting that a lack of money to transact trade within the province carries a heavy cost because the alternative to paper money is not gold and silver coins, which through trade have all been shipped off to England, but barter. Barter, in turn, increases the cost of local exchange and so lowers wages, employment, and immigration. Money scarcity also causes high local interest rates, which reduces investment and slows development. Paper money will solve these problems. But what gives paper money its value? Here Franklin is clear throughout his career. It is not legal tender laws or fixed exchange rates between paper money and gold and silver coins, but the quantity of paper money relative to the volume of internal trade within the colony that governs the value of paper money. An excess of paper money relative to the volume of internal trade causes it to lose value, depreciate. First, Franklin points out that gold and silver are of no permanent value, and so paper monies linked to or backed by gold and silver, as with bank paper money in Europe, are of no permanent value. Everyone knew that over the previous 100 years, the labor value of gold and silver had fallen because new discoveries had expanded supplies faster than demand. The spot value of gold and silver could fluctuate just like that of any other commodity, and could be acutely affected by unexpected trade disruptions. Franklin observes in 1729 that we, Pennsylvanians, have already parted with our silver and gold in trade with England, and the difference between the value of paper money and that of silver is due to the scarcity of the latter. Second, Franklin notes that land is a more certain and steady asset with which to back paper money. For a given colony, its supply will not fluctuate with trade as much as gold and silver do, nor will its supply be subject to long-run expansion as New World gold and silver had been. Finally, and most importantly, land cannot be exported from the province as gold and silver can. He then points out that Pennsylvania's Paper money will be backed by land, that is, it will be issued by the legislature through a loan office, and subjects will pledge their lands as collateral for loans of paper money. Finally, Franklin argues that coined land or a properly run bank will automatically stabilize the quantity of paper money issued, never too much and never too little to carry on the province's internal trade. If there is too little paper money, the barter cost of trade will be high, and people will borrow more money on their landed security to reap the gains of the lowered costs that result when money is used to make transactions. A properly run land bank will never loan more paper money than the landed security available to back it, and so the value of paper money, through this limit on its quantity, will never fall below that of land. If, by chance, too much paper money were issued relative to what was necessary to carry on internal trade, such as the paper money started to lose its value, people would snap up this depreciated paper money to pay off their mortgaged lands in order to clear away the mortgage lender's legal claims to the land. So people could potentially sell the land to capture its real value. This process of paying paper money back into the government would reduce the quantity of paper money in circulation and so return paper money's value to its former level. Automatic stabilization of a natural equilibrium of the amount of paper money within the province results from decentralized market competition within this monetary institutional setting. When the colonies united to fight for their freedom, Congress issued continental dollars, redeemable in silver and gold, to pay for the war. Unfortunately, the U.S. had no gold or silver and promised to pay later. The value of the currency deprecated since many knew that it was unlikely that they would ever be able to redeem the obligation, and England printed large amounts of counterfeit continentals to devalue the currency. In a letter to Joseph Quincy in 1783, Franklin claims that he predicted this outcome and had proposed a better paper money plan, but that Congress had rejected it. Around 1781, Franklin writes a tract called Of the Paper Money of America. In it, he argues that the depreciation of the continental dollar operated as an inflation tax or a tax on money itself. As such, this tax fell more equally across the citizenry than most other taxes. The term fiat money is very misleading. As you can see, the colonial scrip was backed by the collateral of land. And so it is today, as private Federal Reserve notes are backed by the people and property of the United States. The banks may profitably create it for virtually free, but it is backed by us. So why does our nation pay others for money that we alone secure? On to the Revolutionary War. Unite or die. Before the war, the colonies sent Benjamin Franklin to England to represent their interests. Franklin was greatly surprised by the amount of poverty and high unemployment. It just didn't make sense. England was the richest country in the world, but the working class was impoverished. He wrote, "The streets are covered with beggars and tramps." It is said that he asked his friends in England how this could be so. They replied that they had too many workers. Many believed, along with Malthus, that wars and plague were necessary to rid the country from manpower surpluses. We have no poorhouses in the colonies, and if we had some, there would be nobody to put in them, since there is, in the colonies, not a single unemployed person, neither beggars nor tramps. Benjamin Franklin. He was asked why the working class in the colonies were so prosperous. That is simple. In the colonies, we issue our own paper money. It is called colonial scrip. We issue it in proper proportion to make the goods and pass easily from the producers to the consumers. In this manner, creating ourselves our own paper money, we control its purchasing power, and we have no interest to pay to no one. Benjamin Franklin. Soon afterward, the English bankers demanded that the king and parliament pass a law that prohibited the colonies from using their scrip money. Only gold and silver could be used, which would be provided by the English bankers. This began the plague of debt-based money in the colonies that had cursed the English working class. The first law was passed in 1751, and then a harsher law was passed in 1763. Franklin claimed that within 1 year, the colonies were filled with unemployment and beggars, just like in England, because there was not enough money to pay for the goods and work. The money supply had been cut in half. Franklin, who was one of the chief architects of the American independence, wrote, "The colonies would gladly have borne the little tax on tea and other matters, had it not been the poverty caused by the bad influence of the English bankers on the Parliament, which has caused in the colonies hatred of England and the Revolutionary War. Benjamin Franklin. This opinion was confirmed by the great statesmen of his era. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. Already they have raised up a moneyed aristocracy that has set the government at defiance. The issuing power of money should be taken away from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. Thomas Jefferson. History records that the money changers have used every form of abuse, intrigue, deceit, and violent means possible to maintain their control over governments by controlling the money and its issuance. James Madison. Banks have done more injury to the religion, morality, tranquility, prosperity, and even wealth of the nation than they could have done or ever will do good. John Adams. English historian John Twells wrote about the money of the colonies, the colonial script. It was the monetary system under which America's colonies flourished to such an extent that Edmund Burke was able to write about them. Nothing in the history of the world resembles their progress. It was a sound and beneficial system, and its effects led to the happiness of the people. In a bad hour, the British Parliament took away from America its representative money, forbade any further issue of bills of credit, these bills ceasing to be legal tender, and ordered that all taxes should be paid in coins. Consider now the consequences. This restriction of the medium of exchange paralyzed all the industrial energies of the people. Ruin took place in these once flourishing colonies. Most rigorous distress visited every family and every business. Discontent became desperation and reached a point, to use the words of Dr. Johnson, when human nature rises up and assesses its rights. Peter Cooper, industrialist and statesman, wrote, after Franklin gave explanations on the true cause of the prosperity of the colonies, the Parliament exacted laws forbidding the use of this money in the payment of taxes. This decision brought so many drawbacks and so much poverty to the people that it was the main cause of the Revolution. The suppression of the colonial money was a much more important reason for the general uprising than the Tea and Stamp Act. Our founding fathers knew that without financial independence and sovereignty, there could be no other lasting freedoms. Our freedoms and national sovereignty are being lost because most people do not understand our money system. All the perplexities, confusion, and distress in America arise not from defects of the Constitution, not from want of honor or virtue, so much as from downright ignorance of the nature of coin, credit, and circulation. John Adams. So there you have it. That's the story. If this is not an important background history, I never learned this in school. I learned this through the Libertarian Party, Ron Paul, and other fans of the Austrian School of Economics. Even though they're more on money being backed by gold and silver, they also get into the history of money and the ills of central banking and the Federal Reserve System. So here you have it. Benjamin Franklin, colonial script. Everybody was living happily ever after until England found out about it, and they had to bring the people to their knees. How dare these people live with prosperity? So that goes to show you there was abundance even in the 1700s. Abundance. And England created artificial manufactured scarcity. We could have the abundance. They gave us the scarcity. They require us to fight and be poor, live in poverty, and not have the abundance that exists. It's artificially made scarce. See you guys in the next one.